Alright, so today I'm going to be shipping something in a large box. It's going to be heavy, it's going to weigh 120 pounds, and I'm going to pack it for containment. So I've shown this before in another video that talks about packaging tips and tricks for heavy duty shipments, and it gets into like a dozen pointers on how to pack a heavy duty shipment, how to make the box, compact so that you're not exposed. And this video is just going to strictly get into the resizing of the carton itself. It's not going to get into the packaging or any of the tips and tricks that I show in that video. So if you want to see all the other tips and tricks, it's worth your time. If you're shipping heavy duty stuff in heavy containers like this, take the time out to do that, because it shows a couple of different cartons being resized, the packaging that I use, the different types of methods that I use to stabilize the shipments. But this video is not going to get into that at all. So what this video is going to do is going to show how to make a container that is typically this high from here to here. Okay, I'm going to cut it down to about here, and I'm going to make a shorter box out of it, and I'm going to make it stable enough to where if anything happens to it, it's going to be honored under a UPS claim. I've had that happen one time before. I've shipped about 50 of these units in heavy boxes like this. It did happen one time before, and because I used the right techniques to shorten the container, I was able to successfully file a UPS claim even though the box was modified. So I was a shipper for 12 years, so I know how to package these things. I've shipped things from here to China over and over again, so I know how to build a box to where it's going to survive, and if it doesn't, it's going to be claimable per different shipper standards, whether it be UPS or truck shipping or whatever. So basically, I'm going to get into doing this box here. So let me go ahead and get started. I'll show you how high it is to begin with. So let me just pop it out here. Okay. Now, I always use NEMA rated boxes, so the NEMA label's right there. It's a certificate that states what the box standard is, what the burst strength is, everything else that will basically make it legal to ship with a carrier. Very important that you have that on these boxes, otherwise you go to do a claim, that's the first thing they're going to look for. So, okay, so as you can see, this is how tall the box is to begin with, and it's going to end up being underneath the first handle here. So cut down, it looks like about 12 inches or so. I have to figure out the size based on the size of the freight. And again, I showed those tricks in another video. Now the tricky thing about this box is that it's a wardrobe box, it's a U-Haul wardrobe box. So there's perforation here that actually cuts against the corrugation in this box. The corrugation in this box goes up and down. This is a double wall box. You can see two walls there. So, heavy duty box. Now if you're going to get into shipping anything that's heavier than 120 pounds, which is what this box is rated at, you're going to need to use either a triple corrugated box, which I believe goes up to 150 or 180 pounds. It can support that, or do a wooden crate. And I have videos on doing wooden crates, so make sure to look at those videos if you're interested in that. This is strictly on how to use a cardboard box that's ready-made, but it might not be the right size. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to end up cutting it down to here, and then I'm going to be creating new flaps. So I'm going to be cutting these flaps off for starters. So let me go ahead and get started on that. Now what I do with these flaps when I cut them off, I use them for a false floor, and I put foam down in the bottom part of it. So I'm not going to show that in this video. I showed it in the other video. So now I'm just going to go ahead and cut this foam out. And I probably should have did it on the inside. It's more. So I'm going to cut all 4 flaps off because the flaps I'm going to end up with are going to be more than substantial for this box because they're actually going to be a little bit longer than these flaps are to begin with. So there's going to be a little bit of an overlap, which is good because it'll provide a little bit of extra protection on the top, even though I don't expect this box to end up on its lid. But, you know, given the source, it's being shipped UPS, you never know what happens to these shipments, so you got to be prepared for it to end up upside down at some point. I always put the labels on the boxes so they don't get flipped over. That's kind of a tip to UPS that, hey, dummies, this is the right side up. So go ahead and cut these flaps off here. Oops. I just go along the line there, you know, that's my starting point. I suppose it'll be different if you're, you know, considering whatever circumstances that you're shipping under, where that cut point's going to be. But for me, that's where it's at. Now on this one here, this box has handles, so I'm cutting below the handle here, just so that this handle is not in the middle of the elbow, as it were. I don't like to use these elbows right in the middle. I always do either above or just below them because that's a point of weakness. So to do this, let's continue to cut the lids off the box here. And, you know, it doesn't have to be exactly straight. If it does, then you better be using a straight edge to make your cut. But this doesn't have to be exactly straight because, as I said, the top 2 flaps overlap each other. And to me, it doesn't have to be, you know, perfect. It just has to be functional. I mean, yeah, obviously, when it gets to the other end, you want it to be presentable. But, you know, by the time it does get to the other end, because this thing's shipping to the East Coast, you know, and I'm on the West Coast, it's going to be, you know, it's going to show a little bit of mileage on it, you know, so it's not going to be the prettiest thing there is. But the idea is that it's something that's going to be able to handle the weight that's put in it and handle it, you know, without damage. That's the main thing. So go ahead and cut this off here. And normally I'll use a box cutter for this, but it's kind of buried in my unit here, so I'm just using my little pocket knife to do that. I figure most guys who are going to do this anyway are going to probably be using the pocket knife. So, okay, so the lid's cut off of it. Now I'm going to cut down to the point of where I'm going to be folding it, but I have to determine what that point is by figuring out how tall the freight is going to be in it with the packaging and everything. And I always want this to be right onto the packaging so that it is pushing down on top of it and holding it in place because it's a heavy weighted item. So the final phase of this, you know, I'm not going to show that part either because I showed it in the other video. The final phase of it is that I put straps around it so that even though the shipping tape's not going to handle it, the straps certainly will. So I'll be back as I get to that point. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and I figured out how tall it's going to be. So I already knew ahead of time, but I always verify every time because sometimes I'll use different foam. But anyway, the fold line is going to be just below this handle right here. So that means that this handle is going to be part of the lid. I don't ever want the fold line to be in the middle of the handle because there's a hole in the middle of it, and that's going to be bad for the structure of the box. So if I was, you know, to the middle of it, I'd probably put some other padding in there that would bring it to where the fold line would have to be above in order to get this box packed tightly. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and start marking it all the way around to where the fold line actually has to be. You know, you can use a straight edge and pencil or whatever, but you know, I got a chalk line, so it's a little bit easier to do it this way. I just like to make these deals quick, and I try to get it to where the line is level, obviously. So just gonna do a snap line there. The other side is exactly the same height. I did measure it just to verify that, so I'm going to go ahead and do a snap line across this one.
Right, but for you to have the Friday.
Okay, so there we go. Got 2 snap lines, and then I'm going to run snap lines in between, so let me go ahead and get these matched up. So this is the side of the box here. It's the longer side, as you can see. Hopefully you can see that. There we go. Go ahead and snap it down. And I'll do the same for the front. And that's going to give you my guides and where I have to cut down to on the side, because I have to cut down here. Now, one thing about this overlaps, so this is actually where the seam is on the box. So this is going to be a little bit more rigid than the rest of the box, which doesn't have a seam all the way around here. So just to point that out, have to give extra attention to how I fold this flap down for that reason. And I'm going to go ahead and do the other side here. Now this is the side with the perforation on it. This side, as you're going to see here as we go further into the video, is going to be the side that's the most challenging to fold, and it requires a special method of doing that. Otherwise, when you fold it, it's actually going to want to fold down here at the bottom of the perforation instead of where I'm supposed to be folding it. This part here will be rigid because it's the outside part that's kind of connected to the side of the box. So these boxes tend to do that. They try to fold them. So I developed a special way of folding that, and you'll see that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and cut the sides of the box. Again, just using my lowly pocket knife for that, if I could find it. Let me locate my pocket knife, and I'll be back on video here. Okay, so I located my pocket knife. So now I'm going to go ahead and just run a cut down to that line. That indicates where the flaps edges are going to be. And I just run it right down to the line. Notice that I'm cutting on the inside of this part of the box here, so that it's actually kind of establishing the edge there. You do want to run it consistently. You don't want to run it from one edge to the other, because then you'll have a little bit of a crookedness there. That's not going to be. It's just not going to be neat and clean if you do it that way. So there's that. Cut this one down. Now what I'm doing here kind of is an industry standard. Anybody who's been in the shipping business has had to create a custom box out of a box that didn't quite fit. They're going to probably be doing it this way or a very similar way. Now this one here, I'm going to cut on the outside of this part here. So I mean, it's nothing new, but it's something that most lay people don't get to see unless they're in that predicament to where they have to ship something and they don't have the right size box for it. Okay, so there's that. So to fold them, I'm going to go ahead and put it up on the table here and try to get the camera adjusted around that. Okay, so to fold, I'm going to run a piece of wood, and I'm going to brace that against here, and then I'm going to fold over the piece of wood. So A.'ll be back here in a minute. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and do the first fold. So I've taken a straight edge, I put it against here, okay, and the way I start the fold is I start it on the edges. So I'm going to start right here on the edge. I'm going to fold it up first, just so that I get the edges right, because the edges are always the trickiest part to get. And again, you know, these pieces here are the easiest pieces to do because there's no other perforation. So it folds right up against that, and then I can fold it back down and in, and now I got a perfectly straight line, as you can see. I'm going to do that on the other two sides, and then I'm going to show you the way that I do the final side. So, well, I might as well do at least one other side. So, as you can see, the fold goes underneath this perforated handle right here, and that handle is actually going to become part of the lid. So, I don't know if that's very visible there. Let me just put it right here and try to show it better. There it is. Okay. So again, the wood goes underneath where the edge of the fold is, so that I get a perfectly straight line. I start at the very front edge. Now you can see that it wants to fold right in here into this handle. So what I have to do is I kind of have to force it to go up against its will and fold perfectly straight, as it just did. I'll do the same for the other side, and then I'll, as you can see, it folded perfectly, and then I'll do the other. Now I've got this other handle here. I taped these shut. I showed that in the video also, just so that nobody decides they're going to grab it, you know, try to grab it there, because what's going to happen is they grab it there, there's not much material here, it's going to just rip up, and then the whole box is going to end up ripped on that corner. Okay, so now it's time to fold the lid. So I've done all the other flaps here, as you can see. To get this lid right, since it's got perforation, I have to clamp pieces of press board. If you notice, I got, you know, it clamped on both sides there. So there's a piece on the front, and then there's a piece on the inside. And that's what I'm going to use as my guide to fold that box at that point, because it's not going to be done right if this box is not here. As I said, the fold's going to want to be further down in the box, which is going to make the box all distorted. So I'm just going to go ahead and take the edges here a little bit. Start folding at the edges. Okay, and make sure I have that middle part done right. And there you go, nice clean fold. Fold it in, fold it out. And now I got a nice clean fold. So that's how I get that edge done just right. The rest of it, I'm going to show it when it's done, and basically I'm done resizing that box. Yeah, I did want to show that a little bit better. So I clamp it here right at the line that it needs to be folded on. So that's kind of the way it's done. And then on the outside part, you know, it's clamped onto the outside. This board on the outside doesn't have to be short like it is on the inside, because the inside's got to fit on the inside, so that's why it's done that way. So now I'll go ahead and show you the box as it's done, and we're just about done here. Yeah, you know what, I might as well just show me taking off the clamps here. So now I'll just go ahead and take off these clamps. There's that. And whoops, here's this. That board on the inside is going to fall. Go ahead and pull these clamps out of here. Pull this board out of here. And now I have a box that's actually shortened. So I run these pieces in like this because they don't quite match up, because this is the long side. And then these guys here, they overlap each other, which is fine, because I'm going to run tape along here. I'm going to run another piece of tape here and another piece of tape here. And to keep it all together, since it weighs 120 pounds, I'm going to run strap along this side here. You can see that in my other video. I show the whole thing, but that's basically how you shorten a box. So thanks for watching, and enjoy.